Hello and welcome to the next episode of Regen Ag Chat. My name's Liz Jennifer.
And I'm Nick Renison.
We have had a little bit of a summer break, partly because of the conference and partly because we deserved it. But now we're back, and today's episode is really focusing on the new programme of activity that starts this September. The programme is called Be the Change. More information is available on the website, and this shortened podcast is just an opportunity to hear why we're doing it this way, why you should get involved, and what the outcomes hopefully will be. You're going to ask me questions.
Yeah. So in this, I'm going to be the interviewer, and I'm going to ask you, Liz, in hopefully some kind of understandable method on why we are doing this, why we're changing what we do for this year. We're kind of being a bit like Glastonbury and having a fallow year from the conference, aren't we? So, Liz, we did the conference in June. It was great.
Yeah.
Exhausting, but great. And at the end of the conference, we always asked for feedback, and we got our feedback, and the camp team had a good chat. And we've decided to do things a bit differently for the next 12 months. So can you briefly explain the reasoning behind Be the Change, why we've called it Be the Change?
What we took from the conference is that we enjoyed it. I've learned that maybe doing a family constellation session on the day one did sort of lead to some emotional tiredness quite early on. The third day, we did an event at yours. I realised how deeper that conversation could go because of our relationship, and I'd been to the farm, and other people had also been there and were familiar with your system. And that sort of a combination of wanting to change how we do the conference and also sort of understanding that we need to have more of a deeper dive onto farms led us to this sort of starting to think of this new approach. Quite a lot of us are sort of starting to get quite conscious of the fact is that lots of people are talking about stuff. There's not a lot of doing stuff. And I was thinking about this recently, which is if asked to do a presentation about how regenerative farming can revolutionize the world, I've got no data to pull on. We've got quite a lot of anecdotes, and we've got a nice warm glow when we move some electric fences. Actually, what we need is some data or information to say, actually, this is how we go from this place to somewhere else. And hopefully this program will allow us to do a bit of that, albeit only on 3 farms, but that's where we start. And as we know, 3 is my magic number. I like 3.
But I think people listening will have had this, where you go to a conference. Sometimes you're listening to the same people at the conferences, and it's great. But then you go back home and you carry on doing everything that you've always done. And that was maybe one of the frustrations with Carbon Calling. We were giving people lots of opportunity to see and listen to people, tell them how they've done things differently, but then not actually seeing any changes. And I suppose that's our fault, because we're going, do it this way, and then walking backwards, or you can do it this way. So this is going to be a program where, like you said, there's 3 farms, and we're just starting the advertising for those farms. It's live on the website. So Liz, could just briefly talk us through what Be the Change program would involve, and who can apply, who we're looking for.
In terms of applications are open to the 5th of September, and that's just a relatively simple application form that, again, is, as you said, the link is on the website. Then we'll shortlist from that, and we'll both have a chat with them, and then see who's the most appropriate people for the program. And that isn't, for us, it's really important that they're representing a scale of farming, so that they're generating most of their income from farming or land-based industries. So that could be schemes. So some of it is about scale, or making sure it's relevant for other farmers, perhaps. Some of it is about they're on a cusp of something, so they're starting to do things slightly differently and are slightly confused, or they sort of know where they want to get to but don't quite know the how to. So we're sort of interested in those people who are curious about making changes but don't quite know how, or they've started and have just lost a bit of confidence. And so, yeah, curiosity is key. Openness, it's really important that they're open and willing to hold an event next summer. So instead of doing the conference in a shed in Cumbria will do 3 smaller events across on these farms. So that's an important part. So they've got to be happy to do that, and the farm's got to be able to host we've said up to 100 people next summer. So other than that, it's really wide. And yes, ideally there'd be more livestock, but again, it might be interesting for arable farmers who want livestock. So we don't really have a preference about farming systems. It could be dairy farmers. It's open to a wide range of systems, but for me, it's the people that are important, and this idea that they're wanting to start. I don't quite know how.
And where can they be in the
Well,
country?
just I live in the Midlands and you live in the North, so we've just drawn some lines between the Midlands and the North. So obviously, if they're out of that area, then we again would consider them, but we're just trying to put a few boundaries. And that's the north of England, but again, southern Scotland could be possible. We're just trying to limit a bit of the travel time for this first year.
So they'll go to the website. There's a really simple form on the website.
Yeah, which just collects information about farm system, a bit about the farm team, so who else is involved in the business, and that can include details such as who's your trusted advisors, accountants, vets, that sort of stuff. So we're trying to really bring together the whole farm team. And because some of the challenge is that one person comes to a conference, gets really enthusiastic, goes back home, and everyone just says no. So actually, how can we engage the whole team,
Mm.
and how can we help them identify actually what are the limiting factors to get change happening on farm?
Okay. So once they say, for example, they fill in the form on the website, and then we'll have a shortlist and we'll have a chat with those people. At that point, they can easily back away, can't they? They can think, "Ooh, this is just not for us." They can have a chat with us, and we can have a conversation about how the program would be. But explain to me, Liz, what do they get? What happens in
Okay.
that 12 months?
So that, and I'll just jump back, but that relationship is important. Do you mean if they feel like they can't work with us, then we generally know quite early on. If there's a bit of awkwardness, that we can work through some of that, but generally we do have to have a rapport, and so that's important. In terms of the program of activity, and it is very farm specific, but bit that is a definite is that some detailed soil sampling will be done October time. That includes transect, so that's looking at 3 fields across the farm, taking a 100-meter transect and doing detailed soil structure analysis or assessment over that transect, and also taking detailed soil samples around that. So that would include total and available nutrients, would also be doing some food web analysis for that. And that gives us a baseline of where their soils are. And that's coming out of the work I did on the Create course. So it's using the protocol that we've learned through the Create course. That's the definite. But in terms of where we go is really dependent on what the farm needs. So this is not us saying, right, we've got a checklist and we can tell you how you're gonna change this farm. It's for us to take a very different role to the role that we're used to playing, which is more of a coaching role, which is actually we're in service to that person. So actually, what do they need from what do we think they need, and then put in place. It could be a grazing mentor in the form of Renault. It could be an ecologist and someone who's really good at environment schemes, which is Tim Nicholson. It could be someone who's fascinated by compost, and that's Daniel. So it becomes a very farm specific program once we've had some deeper, meaningful conversations with the farmer and their wider farm team. We really want to get an understanding of the finances, and will be dependent on how much people are willing to share with us. But that is the other piece of evidence that we just don't have, which is actually we talk about it and we're going to reduce our inputs, but actually, where do we start from and where do we want to get to? So there will be a focus on soil, there'll be a focus on finances and profitability and sort of doing a bit of a business review. But a lot of it will be based around this more coaching type approach, which is actually what does that person need to help them sort of make the changes themselves. So we won't give a prescription of what we expect this farm to look like in a year's time.
But also not just that person, the stakeholders in that
Yeah.
business.
And We will, in terms of that recruitment, we will be looking for, do we want hugely complex farms in terms of lots of stakeholders? Maybe we don't want 3 of them, but we might look for 1 of them to see actually how can we understand how to manage some of that complexity. We've also, through work we've done on family constellations, we can bring in people if we think that's the tool that's appropriate. We can bring in that tool into these farms.
Just 1 second. Family constellations. Just explain, because we've mentioned it twice. Explain it simply what it is, because it sounds a bit out there.
So it's a way of, this is my version of what it is. It's a way of helping people visualize their relationships. So you can do it with objects. So I'm the issue holder. I have a question, which is what's limiting my transformational change on this farm? That's the question. Then the person who facilitates that will ask, who is the players in this relationship? So in my situation, it's mum and dad, it's my 2 sisters, it's my cousin, the agronomist, all of that. So we get a picture for who is involved in that conversation. So it's already sort of showing up that it's not just me. It's not me that's holding me back. It's the relationships that I have with this wider community of people around the farm. So we can do it with objects on a kitchen table. We sometimes do it with people. For me, it's a way of visualizing those relationships and the tensions that are within those relationships. It's really difficult to explain. I did one at Carbon Calling with about 15 people. Nick refused to come to it.
I did.
And for those people in the room, it was quite an intense experience, but a completely unique way of visualizing these relationships. And that, alongside this sort of need for more understanding, led us to this idea that actually we do need to do some deeper dives. And there is a huge amount of bravery that sits behind some of this, that this is not just about giving them a booklet and dealing with some technical information. This is really understanding what is going on within that person and that wider team.
So I guess if you're listening to this and you're a family business and there's lots of different views around which direction you're going into in the future, this could be an opportunity to kind of explore that, couldn't it? So I guess if you're in what I would call a tricky family situation, don't listen to this and think, oh, well, that's not for me because that's because of the family situation. This could be an opportunity to explore that.
We're not expecting that the whole year is going to have everybody gently weeping every time we turn up. Well, obviously we want a bit of that, but not all the time. So it's not that we're going to spend all of our time like digging around in people's underwear drawer equivalents and going, right, we haven't seen enough trauma. You have to give us more trauma. But what we're identifying is what is missed in loads of different farmer change programs is they don't talk about the people and the feelings and the emotion and that relationship piece at all. We just don't talk about it because it's too awkward. So this is us embracing the awkward again and saying, actually, what would happen if we have conversations that are different to the conversations we normally have when we turn up on farm.
But that kind of softer side alongside some very practical
and
stuff.
I keep jumping around question, but in terms of what will it look like? It will be a couple of visits from me and you. It will be monthly conversations, so phone call conversations with us, and then farm specific experts that will come in to answer a specific question. So could that be succession? Could that be sort of the relationship sort of system? Could it be actually a deeper dive on what does the soil tell us? But that will be driven by what the farm needs, not what we think it needs.
And who's going to pay for it? What's the money situation, Liz?
Through the Esme Fairburn Foundation, we got some money from them, and that covers Rona's time as well. So, and without Rona, this wouldn't have happened. Is that through that we've got some money to do some of this sort of more creative, different way of approaching farms. So it could be farm hacks, it could be co-creation, all of that stuff, and all of these words is written within that program. And so that's covering some of our time. We're approaching different companies to do some subsidized rates for some soil samples and other things. But for me, to sort of demonstrate that this is possible for anybody, is that if we're putting a test or recommending a test or something that's happening on farm, then we have to work with the farmer to negotiate whether the value of that for the farm. So this isn't saying, right, we're going to do a full carbon screen of your farm worth £5,000 or whatever that number happens to be. We're doing, the support is people in the form of us lot and slight tweaks, which would be common farm practice anyway, but we're just targeting them to the questions that we're trying to answer. So most of we've used the phrase, it's worth £8,000 to that farm, and that a lot of that is in people. So putting in experts, coaches, mentors, all of the buzzwords we're now having to use. What I've seen starting to build coaching relationships with farmers is that you're building a relationship where they're empowered enough to stop needing us. So the success at the end of 12 months is that actually they don't need us anymore. Is that we might have check-ins with them every few months, but actually they're searching out new knowledge, they're working it out, they've got the tools and techniques to apply for themselves. And that's the different model to what we tend to see in most agricultural advisors, is that we create dependency. This is not. This is about giving them support for a year and then seeing what might happen after that.
Okay. So the closing date is the
Friday the 5th of September. So a couple of weeks. We haven't given people a huge amount of time on the belief that everybody would leave it to the last minute anyway. So that's why it's relatively short notice.
Yeah.
And the reason why we want a decision made by mid-September is so that we still have time to come out and do that soil assessment really before, well, we can hopefully when we get some rain and before sort of late autumn, really.
And if people have any questions in the meantime, they can just send an email. But I would just urge people to fill in that really simple application form and go from there.
We have a plan of what this might look like, but the idea of co-creation is that it evolves as people come into it, and so that it's being really open all the way through to actually we can adjust things, and that for me and you is working on our control issues, which is the biggest learning from all of us, which is actually what can happen if we let go and see how other people can transform this.
And we bang on a lot, well, I do, about regenerative, which even I'm finding the word more and more annoying. But this isn't kind of a big regenerative kind of bus that's we're going to bang on about it all the time. It might be that you are sheep farm, beef farming, and you just want to just do a change of grazing ever so slightly. So we're not looking for massive transformation to full-on regenerative model, are we? We're just looking for people who are doing something now and they would quite like help to move forward.
You forgot to say that everyone's got to wear knitted trousers throughout. No, and what is it? Knit your own yogurt or whatever it happens to be. And
Not yogurt knitting.
So I think
that's quite important.
But for me, and it's exploring that tension within that word. So I use it sometimes and then stop using it. But what is it? Do we use the word resilience? But that equally is quite triggering for someone. Is it sustainable? But actually, what we're trying to get to is what is the best thing to do for that farm and that group of people with that farm. And that's financially, that's environmentally, and that's socially. The hope is that we have a system that is self-supporting, doing all of that thing. But what we're trying desperately not to have is a tick box of this is what a regenerative farm looks like. And I occasionally speak to people who want that, and that is a dangerous place to get to.
Yeah, there's no box ticking in this exercise, Liz.
And some of that is, and I suppose it might be the biases that we bring, is that a lot of this is regenerating the people on that farm. And actually, the measure of success is that we come at the end of a 12-month program, which is that family or team or is working more effectively together. That for me is the measure of success.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be good. And we've already had some applications already in, and yeah, so I think just go to the website, have a look at the form. If you need to ask us any questions, do that. But yeah, should be really good and interesting.
And you can see Nick and I squirm every time we have to not be in control.
Particularly
So,
you.
you're as bad as me.
No, I don't think I am. I think I'm slightly less. Anyway.
We'll see. But yes, so the website is carboncalling.farm/be the change. 5th of September, deadline. Let's get amongst it.